passion and pageantry of college football lives here. This is the Paul Finebaum Show, Hour 3 podcast.
This might be college football heaven.
We are back and a lot happening, especially the bombshell from Ross Dellinger. We spoke to him at the top of the show. If you missed the conversation, what is going on this week in New Orleans? It's a meeting of the Big Ten and the SEC. Very likely we'll go to 14 schools. You'll have 4 automatic qualifiers from the 2 leagues. You very likely will also see the SEC go to 9 conference games. So a great deal to unpack, and we'll have more on that as the two meet this weekend, Wednesday in New Orleans. Let's go to Jeff on the Zoom. Jeff is calling from Ohio. Hello, Jeff.
Good afternoon, Paul. How are you?
We're doing great. Thank you.
I want to address some of that, but first, do you mind if I goof off for a minute? There was a rain delay for the Daytona 500, and a young boy, about 8 years old, he's called the Rizzler, and he's got this thing called the Riz Move. And I'm going to try it for you. Here goes. Boom. This thing is all over the internet, and so when I saw some race car drivers trying it, Paul, I thought that I should try it for you and issue a challenge to Brad. Who can do the best Riz move by the end of the week? What do you think?
I think Brad's all over it.
No, he's going to kill me. All right. Hey, Paul, you know how I'll be serious now. The Big Ten SEC meeting, I get very suspicious. Last week, Purdue played Michigan on a Wednesday. It was a marquee game. And you know how when there's a game about to be played, I look up regular network TV, see if my game's on there, ESPN channels, or the Big Ten channel. If it's not there, I know, oh my God, it's got to be that pay channel. It's called Peacock. Does the SEC have a pay channel that they do that to as well?
No, we don't.
Well, I wonder if it's on your way because it's the biggest screw job. I'm already paying a package that has the Big Ten teams, the ESPN game that covers the Big Ten team, or network TV. And to find out that they want me to pay for another pay channel that's called Peacock, I'm wondering if this is headed your way.
Well, Peacock is part of NBC, and I have never subscribed to it, nor will I. I don't like those kind of things. And one thing, ESPN has alternate programming. It's called ESPN Plus, where you pay a fee and whatever it is, I'm not even sure, and you can get access to many, many games. There's a new thing coming up. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm really happy right now that all the games that we produce are either on ESPN, ESPN2, or the SEC network. Great to talk to you, Jeff. Good to see you. We'll see you soon, and I'll be working on whatever you just showed us.
Thank you.
Rick is up next in Houston. Rick, go right ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. So, Paul, I was wondering if you'd like a 10 or 15-minute dissertation on all the mistakes I've made in my life, or maybe we should just...
No, you don't need to, for this reason. Judge John has already done it for everyone.
Right. Paul, but on the plus side of Judge John, at least he's moved on from, telling us how much he's hydrating and how often he has to go and eliminate.
Well, but the most important thing, I think, is at least he's now in the 60s. So we only have 65 more years for him to catch up in his life.
He's getting there, Paul, and maybe John from St. Louis will get into the 60s here sooner or later. But I think he's still stuck watching Lawrence Welk reruns with the Lennon sisters. But hey, Paul, a couple of things about LSU, man. Hey, our our ladies in gymnastics took down OU. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I'll watch that. That was pretty amazing.
And then the baseball team, Paul. Yeah, I know. I mean, it was an early game, and Purdue Fort Wayne is a nobody. But the interesting thing over the weekend was that the pitching staff only walked 2 batters. So, man, if they have that kind of control throughout the season, it might bode well for LSU.
Well, the baseball season has arrived. Hey, thanks for the call. Judge Chris, another judge, is up next.
Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Finebaum. I've heard a rumor. Are you moving? Are you and the doctor moving?
Yeah, there was a story out last week about a purchase in Alabama. I can confirm there was a story about that.
Well, if you move, you better make sure your wife is willing to move.
Judge Chris, let me make it clear to you on one thing in particular. This was not my idea, okay?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I could probably enter a restraining order,
yeah,
but anyway.
This is my idea, and all I did was accompany her to the house, and everything that has happened since then has been her.
There are 5 rules for buying a house.
Yes.
Do you know what they are?
I don't know what they are, but I know one thing is very important. Keep your mouth shut.
No, here's the 5 rules for buying a house.
Okay.
A, buy the house your wife likes. 2, buy the house. It's a good place you can, location to get to work and shop.
Right.
3, buy the house your wife likes. 4, buy a house you can afford, pay the mortgage. 5, buy the house your wife likes. Hey,
by the way, I think I got 4 of those 5. There's one I missed on. Or excuse me, there's 2 I missed on.
Yeah, it ain't. Don't even try.
2 very big ones.
Talk about. Yeah, they're big. So, hey, good friend of mine, Keith and Jane West. We're going to be with him tonight. Big Kentucky fans. He was called the Sod God. He gives me advice every now and then, and he thinks Kentucky is going to be good. And but I don't think they're going to go far this year in basketball. What do you think?
I think they're a little inconsistent, which is troubling, as you know, Judge, in the NCAA tournament.
It is. Consistency is going to be big. And today, I think, is a federal holiday. Am I not correct?
It is President's Day, we used to have Lincoln's birthday, which was on the 12th, and Washington's birthday, which is on the 22nd. So I believe this is a compilation of the 2. I'm not positive because this is a fairly new holiday.
Well, the reason I mentioned that is I sent you a little Valentine, but it didn't get there on Valentine's Day, so it'll get there. Randy, it'll be served to Randy. Should get it tomorrow.
Okay.
And now keep in mind, this is my playpen is coming from. One of the techniques you use is you present papers threatening to do something, but you make them pretty weak so that the other side thinks you don't have your stuff together.
Right.
So this is just a courtesy shot across the bow, and we'll work from there. I'm not trying to be hostile.
Judge, I am so happy to hear that. Well, thank you, Judge, for the call. Judge Chris, the last remaining judge. We had 3 or 4 different judges who have called on this show. One has somewhat gotten off track, and we have ruled him in contempt of court. Judge Chris is still there. I don't know. This guy is about to appear, I believe, this coming weekend in front of a judge. So why don't we go to John next in St. Louis? Hey,
Paul,
John.
it's actually on 227.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not going to talk about, but Paul, that kind of brings me up a couple of comments real quick here.
Wasn't it originally on the 22nd, John?
It's 227.
Well, now it's at least during the week. Originally, you told us it was on a Saturday.
It's on a Thursday at 9:30.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear. Just tried to get that
anyway,
confirmed
Paul,
for you, which I did. A little trickery there.
Yeah,
old reporter in me there.
That's okay. Anyway, Paul, real quick here. I'm not sure where I heard a comment made earlier to me in the show about Don from Birmingham, and I'm not sure what Don's point was. But, Don, if you want to talk business, call me up. I'll give Randy and Jamari and Paul my number, and we can talk. I don't know exactly where you were coming from, but you seem to regurgitate. You like that one, Paul?
By the way, I like that word. That's a very good one.
Regurgitate your information, Don, from Birmingham. But, Don, I'm going to move on here. The second thing, Paul, I'm going to mention here is everybody's talking about Alabama and the Auburn game, and that's fine. But there's a pretty good team developing up here in the University of Missouri. And I would appreciate it if maybe Coach Gates can come on and he can talk
Coach
business
Gates,
with you.
Is welcome here anytime he has the time.
Well, Paul, you need to call Coach Gates up, and I know Coach Gates' number because he's a friend of mine.
Well, I happen to know Coach Gates, and the reason I know him, he's been on the show a number of times.
Well, not very recently, Paul.
You know what, John? I'm really sorry that we have not had him recently, but we'll certainly effort that.
And the last thing I want to talk about, Paul, real quick here, and this is going to segue. Can I segue? I'm going to segue over.
The court will give you that privilege. Just trying to get you ready for next week.
Here we go. SEC Nation and USA. We've had a very ugly situation that occurred up in Canada last Friday or Saturday night.
You talking about the hockey game?
I'm not going to talk specifics, but our young men showed they were proud, and they didn't let up, and they took it to them.
Right.
And so, America, you stand up for yourselves and don't back down to these hecklers. And I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a game here in Beantown on Thursday night.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you right now, Canada, you better watch out, Canada.
Well, John, I think we just beat Canada the other night, so I think we'll beat them again. We'll beat them like a maple leaf. We'll take a short break. We are coming right back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We're back and we head to the Zoom. Who you got? Brad is up next from Macon.
Hey, Mr. Paul, I just want to make sure I got my coffee and everything, so I'm all good to go. But it seems like to me the Athletic might have we need to get a new human resources manager over there. Because that guy must be Ari Wasserman's doggone step brother or twin brother or something, because last time I checked, Paul, this is not a participation enterprise. This is not unicorns and rainbows. I mean, this is we're a capitalistic country, not a socialistic country. So if the Big Ten and SEC take 75% of the market, so be it. It's the Amazon and the Walmarts of the country, baby. What you think, Paul?
Yeah, I can't get too upset about a bunch of undeserving schools getting in. I mean, there are already enough undeserving schools in the tournament.
No doubt. And do you think us going to a 14 or 16 is actually going to help the process, or do you think that's going to hurt the process with some of these teams getting in that's playing a high school schedule or out of conference? They don't want to play a Power 4 opponent.
I think it's going to end up rewarding mediocrity.
So what you're saying is the first round it's not going to be good. You got to wait.
I mean, what you get in the
on.
first round is you get an additional SEC school. Although I think most years the SEC would have 4 anyway. It's just a guarantee. And I don't think the games. I think of those 5 or 6 games, most of them will be snoozers.
I believe so too. And if Mr. Mandel don't like it, he can always write about pickleball or polo. There's always something to be written about. So, dude, if you don't like the way the setup is going to be, and we're knocking out 75% of the field, that's just too bad. You can get over it because this ain't unicorns and rainbows, baby. This is the SEC and the Big Ten, and we own the market.
Brad from Macon once again delivering the truth. We stay in Georgia, and we head to Vance, who was up next. Hey, Vance, go right ahead.
Good to talk to you, my friend.
Thank you.
I sit here and I hear what's going on, which, from where I come from, I blame all of this on the NCAA, but that's beside the point. We're talking about the Big Ten and the SEC. They're going to take over everything, or they're attempting to, make their own rules. But I'm curious because in my lifetime of watching college football, what in God's name has happened to a school that I believe has fielded some of the best teams throughout history in Southern Cal? What has happened to? Why is that place so irrelevant? How is it that they have allowed everything to go to 2 conferences, and basically one of those conferences, regardless of what they've just recently done, and I salute them, they're still only a 2-team conference. There hadn't been a team out of that conference win a national championship since 1959. So what happened to them out there? Paul, is it the fans? Is it the lack of interest? I mean, they were fantastic, Paul. You know this. What do you think?
Well, I think, you're talking about USC, is that correct?
Yes, and even a couple of Washington teams. Like I watched Washington and Miami in 91.
Remember, USC and Washington are in the Big Ten now.
I know. What happened to them?
I think what's happened.
Did that all happen?
USC 2 years ago, 3 years ago, had one of the best teams in the country. They had the best quarterback in the country. But I believe Lincoln Riley simply took a shortcut to get there. I think he's a fraud as a big-time head coach. And I think the biggest problem in L.A. is on a given day, if things are perfect, SC is a very important story. But if they aren't perfect, they don't matter. I've been in Los Angeles a number of times. You got the Lakers, you got the Dodgers. You have the Rams, you have the Chargers, you have the Clippers, you have the Beach. Ultimately, college football had better be good, or it doesn't cause a ripple. I mean, I covered a USC game out there about 12 years ago, and it was an afterthought. No one knew what was going on, and it was actually a pretty big game, which was the reason we were out there. But it's hard to register when you have that much competition.
Well, it doesn't matter what I think. I'm just saying, I could start naming players, which I'm not going to do, which you could do, that are some of the best that ever played the sport of football at Southern Cal, and some of the best teams throughout the years.
No, really, 60s, 70s, even into the 80s a little bit, but they had it going again in the 2000s with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, but. It's about the coach, and ultimately they made a mistake hiring Lincoln Riley. It was a quick fix. It turned out to be fraudulent, and they will have a hard time recovering. Hey, thanks for the call. We're up against a break. One more guest talking about something that happened yesterday that literally was stupefying. No one saw it coming. We'll find out what happened with our next guest.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We're back. A lot happening in women's basketball. Yesterday was quite an eventful day out in Texas, as well as Columbia, South Carolina. It's pretty shocking when you think about it. Before we get to Alexa Phillipou, let's take a listen to what it sounded like.
We just got punked today. It's very much embarrassing. You know, that's not who we are. It was very much self-inflicted as well, and that we just got to learn and grow from this opportunity, and that we just got to do a better job giving effort and being mentally and physically tough.
Obviously, when you lose like this, there's something else that's going on that isn't just about basketball. So we got to figure that out and get back on it. We got to play better. We got to perform better. I feel really bad for our fans. I mean, they packed the house. They did their part, and we just really had an embarrassing performance. And we got to get things back on track. I mean, I think we have probably all of our streaks have been broken this particular year, but it was a hell of a ride. I mean, to win 71 straight, is it 71? 71 straight here. We got a chance to start a new streak on Thursday, and we got to get back at it. Since we're on a higher education campus, F. This season's a long season, right? You play a team like UConn, like now, you win. It may have some ill effect to the next game. You lose, and it definitely will wake you up.
A rare position for Dawn Staley. Alexa, thank you for joining us. I know you're probably still shaking your head. Everyone is. What is Coach Staley talking about in reference to something else is going on there?
Yeah, Coach Staley didn't specifically elaborate on that particular point within answering that question, but I think you could get kind of clues from other things that she brought up in that press conference. She talked about specifically when you had the clip of her saying that was an F, that was about her team's effort. So she really didn't like how they played on both ends of the floor. Defensively, you know, there's so many open threes that they gave up for UConn to be able to really take advantage of. And that was an issue. Offensively, she wasn't happy with how they were able to try and get into some sort of offensive movement and flow. And so there was effort. She also said later on in that press conference that when you lose a game like that, it's really about toughness. And that's something that, like you alluded to, we're not really used to seeing as a problem for Dawn Staley teams. So I think that between those things, and also she mentioned that she wants her team to keep the main thing, get back to its habits, to its identity. Those are the things I think she's going to want to really see from her group as we get going here towards the end of the SEC slate and then heading into March. So definitely things that were more of those sort of intangibles that then kind of lead to the tangibles on the court, and hopefully for the Gamecocks, things that can be fixed over the next, 5-6 weeks.
A loss would have been pretty surprising, but 29 points. There are a lot of reasons why you lose, but that remains. I'll let you speak to it. You're the expert. I mean, one of the more shocking results I believe I have ever seen. Try to put it into words.
Yeah, I went down to Columbia thinking there was a chance UConn could win, but if that happened, it would be a really tight game. I don't think I ever considered that they would blow out South Carolina on their home court. I mean, this is just something that South Carolina does not do. They do not lose on that home court, as everyone knows about the streak, the 71 games in a row that they had won at Colonial Life Arena. But then also just to lose in such dominant fashion, it was the largest home loss under Dawn Staley since, I believe, her first season at the helm. So a little bit also surprised from the UConn perspective of the fact that they hadn't played that well all year, and a testament to them putting things together at the right time. But I think it also goes back to some of that effort, toughness, and just never really even having a sense of control really after the second, like midway through the second quarter, the game was essentially over. And that is just something we rarely have seen from South Carolina teams. Saw it a little bit in that UCLA loss earlier this season. But I think the difference here was that it was, at Colonial Life Arena where they've been so dominant. They've been so good, and they never really got closer than, I think, 22 points in the second half. They had no, second punch, more or less, to be able to respond. So that's, I think, one thing that they'll really have to work on is that ability to bounce back, to fight back if things don't go their way early on in the game.
Alexa, I'm pretty squeamish. I would not want to be at practice today. But then again, we're also about to find out why Dawn Staley is so good. But I think we both expect this team to come back. Let me get to another game. What happened in Austin? We shouldn't be surprised at this point with what Vic Schaefer is laying down there. He's done it again. Another major win. This one over LSU.
Yeah, this is a Texas team that I think is now the team to beat in the SEC. They've won 10 straight games since losing to South Carolina. They then, of course, avenged that loss and handed the Gamecocks their second loss of the year. But for me, it's not just, the typical Vic Schaefer defense that's been so good for the Longhorns this year. It's the fact that they have, their star freshman, Madison Booker. Over the last 6 games, she's averaging 21.5 points per game, and almost 8 rebounds per game. So she's just really able to hurt defenses with her ability to pull up in the mid-range. She impacts the glass and ability for them to really dominate on the boards. But also, I think for Texas too, when they're able to have their kind of duo of bigs and Taylor Jones and Kyla Oldacre, that's, I think, what's going to make this team potentially a team that could not just go to the Final Four, but maybe could cut down the nets. They're not a team that necessarily shoots a lot of threes. They can rely a lot on Madison Booker to get going offensively and generate offense. But when they have that interior duo able to really just dominate inside on both ends, and neither has to do too much because they can both do it at separate times on the court, then that's really going to kind of take this Longhorn squad to the next level. And I think it's really Vic Schaefer's best shot getting back to the Final Four since he's been at Texas.
Alexa, finally, we had a chance a couple weeks ago after her first record to talk to Michaela Blakes from Vanderbilt. She's done it again. I realize her team maybe doesn't seem to have people fear them as much as the 2 or 3 we're talking about, but just what does she mean right now to the game of women's basketball?
Well, she means so much specifically to this Vanderbilt program that's trying to reemerge into relevance in the SEC and nationally. But I think, too, this is a player that she didn't necessarily go to a program that had really been prominent in recent years, that really made a lot of noise in either the SEC or nationally. And so she's showing, I think it's going to take a little bit of time for Vanderbilt to maybe get into that conversation of making a deep March run or, get back into the Final Four. But if you have a player that can score 55 points any given night, I mean, that's a player that no one's really going to want to face, especially as we get headed into postseason play. So she's just been remarkable offensively. She's such a complete player. She's also really strong on the defensive end. She averages 2.5 steals per game. And I think this is the star player that Shea Ralph really needed to be able to take Vanderbilt to that next level and get them back kind of as on their way back to kind of a national power, more or less. But it's cool to see that even this program that people weren't really paying attention to in women's basketball has this really, really transcendent freshman star. And she right now, I think it's between her and UConn Sarah Strong for freshman of the year. And it would be, either way, just 2 great cases and 2 great compelling arguments. So she's a player that everyone's going to be watching for the years to come, not just at Vanderbilt, but then whenever it's time for her to go pro.
Alexa, many thanks. It was great to meet you and have you on the program. We look forward to do it again. What an incredible weekend in women's college basketball, and the new week is well underway. We'll talk more about it as we work our way through it. Quick break here as we come back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We're back, and let's check in with Chris in South Carolina. Hello, Chris. Chris, you there? No, Chris. How about Handsome Joe up next? Hello, Joe.
Roll Tide, roll, Paul Finebaum. How you going, my man?
We are doing great, thank you.
Well, hey, I just want to say I've been listening to the show. I ain't left the house today, so I've listened to the whole show, and it's actually been pretty good. But now the first guy that you came on, I liked his thing about what they may go to here in a couple of years about the 14 to 16 team playoff. And I don't know, the way I see it, Paul, the only reason I can see they're trying to go up with it is because we've got too many as it is, but we just had some get in there this past year that shouldn't have been in there. So they're going to just try to raise it up so we can get the ones that could probably wax like Indiana or, wax their butt easily. And I think Boise State was overrated this year too. But I mean, the strength of schedule has got to start coming into play here because Ole Miss, especially South Carolina, they'd have blown Indiana out of the water. I mean, neither one of them. And so that's the only reason I can see they're doing it. I'm pretty sure they're going to go ahead and go through it. But in a couple of years. But and another thing I want to mention about John. John. I don't know what he did out in Colorado. So, I mean, it couldn't have been too serious, or they wouldn't have let him leave the state. But, when he gets done with court, maybe he'll just get some, community service. Maybe, 2,000.
Yeah, the problem, though, Joe, and you understand this, but when you get sent, when you're found guilty of something, and I'm sure he will be, the most important thing a judge wants to hear is contrition and remorse. And this guy is capable of telling the judge where to go.
You're right. Yeah, I think if he acts any way the way he does when he calls into your show, there's no way the judge is going to throw the book at him. But the good news is, maybe Bash can, bring you some cookies or something. Yeah, but he'll be right up. Bash
will be close. You're right.
So Bash can go, bring him some cookies and give us an update on how John's doing in the slammer, and how they're treating him, and what he's getting to eat, and all this good stuff, and how the inmates is making him do their laundry, and this kind of good stuff. But John, I don't see him. I just can't see him. I couldn't see him in church either. He'd probably argue with the pastor. I mean, I just don't see him doing anything, and he probably was guilty. And more than likely, it was running his mouth to the wrong ones, and probably drunk. I mean, who knows what he was doing, Paul? But I can't wait to hear what happens to this, because I'm intrigued by this case. I can't wait to hear what it is. And I don't think he's telling us the whole story.
We have called Court TV and asked if they could give us a live feed. So we'll continue to update. Hey, Joe, always great to hear from you. Chris is up next.
Oh, man, Judge John ain't got nothing. I'm sorry. John from Missouri ain't got nothing to worry about. All he got to do is play his calls from this show, and he's going to get the insanity plea, and he's going to get off. But, Paul, it's a weak move by the SEC. It's a weak move by Greg Sankey. First of all, getting these automatic bids, trying to get 4 teams in there. If you're the best, Paul, just play the games, and you'll get the right number of teams in there, Paul. But it's weak, Paul. It's weak trying to link up with the Big Ten. I don't like it at all. It's weak. Clemson been standing on their own 2 feet for the last 15 years, Paul, last 16 years, getting when they want to get there when they don't. So I'm not worried about us, because 9 out of 10 years we're going to get one of them 2 spots. But I'm going to tell you right now, they're just weak. And it just shows how the SECs and how this big money want to change college football. It don't matter who you put in there. You can put all 14 teams in there, Paul. But it ain't going to matter. The best team's going to come out on top. And next year it's going to be them Clemson Tigers. You have a nice day.
Yeah, it's getting really negative reviews outside the region. We talked to you, Stuart Mandel from The Athletic called it arrogance. Pat Forty of Sports Illustrated has just written about it, talking about nobody wants your expansion scam. I mean, it's pretty tough criticism of what is about to go down between the SEC and the Big Ten. Let's continue with more phone calls here and check out Kelly in Kentucky. Hello, Kelly.
Hey, Paul. How are you?
We are doing great. Thank you.
I am a former Division I athlete in 2 sports. I have a Division I athlete at a Big Ten school, was in the ACC. My thing is why do we base everything we talk about on 65 teams in college football, the Power 5 or 4, whatever you want to call them, which makes up 20% of the student athletes in Division I? We have the haves and have-nots. If we were to look at the NCAA expenditure report, we have gone past what professional sports allows. This is the wild, wild west. No one wants to coach, and you're going to see some great coaches leave this industry, because we should have the haves, which is the Power 4, 5, whatever you want to call, and the rest of people, because it is not fair for them to play the bottom 100 or whatever and rack up wins to say they're 12-3. What the lower half, not the Power 5, need to stop doing is not play these guys. Let them beat up on each other and let's see then who is the cream of the crop. Don't put.
Yeah, Kelly, I don't know what happened to your connection.
ACC.
There you are. Okay.
Play someone from the ACC or the Pac-10 or whatever the hell. But don't play these OVC, ASUN groups. If you want to play with the big boys, then you purely play Power 5 schools, period. 20% of the group.
Yeah, Kelly, I agree with that point. It is wrong. Now, you understand better than anyone, having participated, that the reason the OVC, MAC, the reason why they're playing those games is a payoff. But I wonder.
Yeah, they're body bag games. They're body bag games.
Exactly.
You've got 100 guys in the Power 5, and then you've got these 1AAs, so to speak, because I'm old school, that have 65 players. They're body bags, and it's not worth it because the worst place to be in college athletics, worse than Division II, is that 1AA group. They make nothing.
You're right. Listen, I agree with you, Kelly. It's well laid out, and you have the credentials to back it up. Thank you very much. It's quite there is quite a disconnect right now in college athletics. If you needed me to remind you of that, we'll be right back.
Thank you for listening to the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. Watch the Paul Finebaum Show weekdays from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network. Plus, you can listen and watch on the ESPN app.